Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Frontier. So we're just about to be joined by CCP Sondheim, who's going to be running through EveNet. And then at the end, if you've got any questions, there'll be a short Q&A with CCP Raudur as well. So thanks for coming.
Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Fanfest 2025. Everyone excited to be here? All right. My name is CCP Sondheim, and I'm a senior full-stack developer. I work full-time on Frontier, and I'm on the engineering team. And welcome to EveNet Up Close and Personal. Now, I want you to, let's go through an experiment for a little bit. Think about reality. What is reality, right? Think about the word reality. It's the sum of everything that exists. Let's go through a little experiment here. Close your eyes. Close your eyes for me, it's fine. Forget what you see. Can you feel what's left? Can you feel the weight of gravity pulling you down? Of air brushing past your skin, the fabric on your skin? You don't have to see gravity to know that it's real. You trust that it's there. Because reality didn't disappear just because you stopped looking. Okay, you can open your eyes now. In the same way, virtual worlds don't disappear just because you logged off. Not anymore. And we're used to thinking that very much like in the Matrix, that there's a hard line between real life and virtual life. But what if that line didn't exist anymore? What if your life didn't end just because you clicked exit game? eFrontier creates a deeply immersive world, but EveNet pushes that immersion to a whole new level. Because EveNet isn't confined to the game client. It's not just data that's locked inside a CCP database. We're creating a persistent layer of digital reality, one that exists outside the server, beyond the game, and under your control. When we first envisioned EveNet, we started with the question, how do we create a world that exists beyond the here and now? And how do we create a world that persists? Because in real life, we trust the world around us because of physics, right? We didn't invent those rules. We discovered them. These two guys are up, certainly did. And they don't change. When you walk, gravity is holding you down. And when you build, the laws of nature are holding you up. And that's what lets us trust the real world. And that's the same mindset that we brought into eFrontier. That's why we have built EveNet on digital physics. It's a foundational layer of reality inside the frontier. These are the laws of Frontier's world, always on and always true. Once the rules are locked in, players can start to build with confidence. You can create lasting structures, systems, civilizations. Because this isn't about persistence. It's about immersion. It's a world that remembers what's left. It's a world that remembers what you built. Even when you're logged off, even when you're gone, even forever. That's the power of EveNet. So what is EveNet really? It's a persistent, verifiable layer of reality that exists beyond any single server. Because right now, you've all heard this before, if a nuclear bomb were to fall on the CCP servers, everything would be gone, right? But with EveNet, everything that you build, your structures, your logic, your identity, it's written on-chain. Not just in CCP's database, but inside a shared network, a world with memory, a world with rules. Because it's on-chain, it's yours. There's no rollbacks, no deletions, and there's no takebacks. It's not about limitation, it's about trust, and it's about freedom. This is the engine behind everything that you've seen in eFrontier. The smart gates that are linked to storage units, on-chain. Player-created mod behaviors, on-chain. Your ship, your logic, your identity, still there even after you log out. That's because it's on-chain. That is EveNet in action. And it's what makes eFrontier the world's first server-side, massively moddable MMO. Because you're not uploading to a server, you're committing to a world. And once the rules are in place, the questions start to shift. How do we inhabit a world with its own laws of digital physics? When you can build anything, but only within those constraints, what are you going to choose to create? Think back to your teenage bedroom. It wasn't just a room, it was a canvas, right? Posters and lighting and furniture. That's the reason that we mod, because we want to claim space. We want to express ourselves and we want to belong. EveNet takes that spirit and it turns Frontier into the ultimate moddable universe. We're not just opening the world. We made it programmable, because EveNet is more than modding. It's a shared database that you can write to. It's a programmable canvas governed by digital physics. You're building ships, you're building systems, you're building cities, all while defining who can access what, how, and when, kind of like that keep out sign in your teenage bedroom. And because of this, we've baked in real-world ideas, access control, permissions, governance, and exactly the kind of tools that you would use to build a real society. And if you've already played eFrontier, there are computers at the back if you haven't, you've probably already used EveNet. You just didn't know it yet. So why would you want to build on EveNet, right? Because it doesn't just give you tools, it gives you power to write logic, to link behaviors, and to make systems think. You're not just placing smart assemblies, you're programming them. So you can create gates that let you jump under specific conditions. You can trigger turrets that let you respond to enemy ships. Or even, like this here, create bounty hunters to claim rewards after successful kills. And that's not a feature list, that's emergent gameplay. The best part is that we didn't make this. CCP didn't make this. You made this, not us. Right now, builders are connecting gates to storage. They're triggering behaviors, writing logic that makes the world feel alive. This is a bottom-up revolution. This is not top-down content. You're not customizing the world. You're engineering this reality. This is where the world starts to think, to move, and to belong to you. And Eve players love tools, right? They love building them. They love making them better than we, the devs, could ever have imagined. EveNet lets you take that to the next level. Because right now, with EVE Online APIs, you get access to read data, and you can see what's happening. But with EveNet, you're not just reading to the world. You're writing to it. You're programming that logic. And let me show you what that looks like in action. So right here, Aquila is building on top of a player-made mapping tool. It's called Atlas Map Create. And now they've added real-time intel sharing using verifiable pods of scan data. Thanks to EveNet, those pods are using zero-knowledge proofs. That means that the intel is provable. We can prove that this event actually happened. There's no spoofing and there's no tampering. And right here you see that green screen, and that's how you know the scan data is the real thing. We just had a hackathon, And the overall winner from that latest EveNet hackathon, these guys, Minehall. This project brings a whole new layer of logistics, access control, and automation to life, especially for tribal infrastructure outside of a station. You can set up automated dispensing systems for your SSU networks, for your smart storage unit networks. That means that you can manage your mining operation, your inventory, and access all without manual micromanagement. Minehall is using pods, verifiable proofs, to gate access. It checks the status of players and the trust level of whoever's requesting the access. If they meet the criteria, they get in. And if they don't, they don't. And this is all on-chain and provable. Because with this technology, EveNet doesn't just let you secure your supply on-chain, it programs it. And why stop at Frontier? Why stop at Frontier? With EveNet, you're not limited to just building in the world. You could build whole worlds within worlds. So at the same hackathon, we saw players that were using on-chain data from EveNet to procedurally generate planets. Planets that evolve over time as the world around them changes. These planets are alive, they live. One team even had their planet tied to a Unity-based simulation, and it was tracking population, tracking growth, tracking behavior, all dynamically shaped by EveNet activity. The planet reacts to the player. It evolves as you interact with it. You're not just visiting it, you're shaping it. You can create a game within a game, a simulation within a simulation. And it's a pocket universe that remembers that you were there. Now, of course, none of this is flawless, right? EveNet is still evolving. It's a young system, and every new technology has its sharp edges. Now, 12-verb mnemonics, that's not ideal. I'll be the first to admit it. But neither were the first smartphones or the first internet browser. We are smoothing all of that out. We are building invisible systems that let you get right into play. Do you remember keys, passcodes, door fobs? When you needed to get into somewhere, it used to be a whole thing. Now you just glance at a camera. You just wave your phone, and it just works. And that's where we're going with EveNet. You hold the keys, and everything just works. We're designing a new kind of experience, one where ownership is secure and access is seamless. That's why we're building an account abstraction so that the tech fades into the background. Because you're not managing a chain, you're just playing a game. And at the end of the day, you're just building a world. Let me give you a metaphor that I love. Think about the vault doors at Gringotts, okay? Massive, enchanted, multi-layered mechanisms of arcane security. But what does it take to open one of these vault doors? If you're a goblin, all it takes is one tap of a fingernail. And all of that complexity is hidden away. Because the system knows who you are, and it trusts you. And that's exactly how we're thinking about EveNet. Under the hood, yes, it's complex, but for you, it's just one tap. Because the future of digital ownership can't be gated behind clunky UX, right? Just like how with EVE Online, if you wanted to build, you can create all sorts of systems just using SSO login. With EVE Frontier, we're making systems that unlock your access to everything, to your ships, to your mods, to your identity, and to your data, because this is your world, not just in Frontier, but everywhere you go. These are your ships, your mods, and your identity. These are on-chain, persistent, and they're yours. even if you leave Frontier, even if you log off forever. Because today, CCP holds the keys, but with EveNet, you do. If you're a creator, launch your mods into the world. If you're an explorer, just take your identity across platforms. If you're a builder, shape a world that remembers you. And now here's the big question. With all of this at your fingertips, what are you going to build? Thank you, everyone. This has been CCP Sondheim. I am going to open this up for questions, if anyone has any questions. There is a QR code right here. You can just scan that, and your questions are going to pop up on screen. Or if anyone wants to shout any questions into a mic, we've got one ready right here. I'm also going to introduce here on stage CCP Raudur. He's going to be joining me here on stage. He's our technical director for eFrontier.
Hello.
Hi. You talked about the keys. What happens if I lose my keys? I am losing my keys all the time, like my car keys, for example.
So the question for anyone who didn't hear it is, what happens if you lose your keys? Now, remember how with currently in eFrontier, I will admit that it is not the easiest system because there is a 12-word mnemonic phrase that you're going to have to write down and memorize, but with the next generation of what we're building out in EveNet, you're going to be able to use all of this so that you can just be linked in with the same login that you would to get into the eFrontier client. So that takes away a lot of this complexity of needing to hold multiple kinds of keys to interact with EveNet. Did that answer your question? Amazing, thank you.
Maybe to add to that, like now the key is kind of the owner of everything, but we're moving that ownership to the chain. So there's a smart contract on chain that owns everything, and we're just allowing you to control it with having different signers and keys to access those items on chain.
Any other questions?
Over there in the corner, inside of here. And remember, if you have any questions, you can just scan on the QR code, and those questions will just show up on screen.
Thank you. So with the introduction of EveNet, there are going to be a lot of different APIs and methods of sort of implementing completely novel systems onto the chain. How is EveNet going to foster systems to build trust between players? In our last talk, CCP Kalira mentioned that the Code of Hammurabi was a system that had very harsh punishment for breaking the rules, such as slavery, execution, exilation. Do you see something similar to ensure trust between player transactions, making it so that players conducting transactions can be trusted, similar to a bank, basically trading interactions between players as something that players can have confidence in?
That's an excellent question. CCP Raudur, do you want to take this one?
Great question. Okay, so I think like one thing that we're focused on is like creating the digital physics, the rules, and we really want it to be like, it's a funny thing when we talk to tech providers and others that are helping us with a lot of the infrastructure, and they're like, yeah, we can make it really secure, and we're like we really don't want it to be too secure. We want people to be able to kind of within the boundaries, within the rules, to cheat each other and even scam, but we want it to be that they can create the systems. If they choose to create the system, for example, a rating system or a way to kind of give you a thumbs up for good service, that should be how we do it. But we really want to try to help the players to understand when they're in the game that we are making, and they should be able to trust that. And once they go to the third-party created dApps, then we want to be obvious, like this is somewhere where you're kind of on your own. We didn't make it. You have to either trust the party or ask others if they trust that one.
Amazing. And now I see that we have a question that's come from the audience. How does one protect their digital identities against malicious actors and scammers on EveNet? I can have a shot at this one. So the short answer is that you're going to have to trust your community, but that's part of what makes the gameplay so fun. When you're talking about digital identities, you can talk about different ways that you're protecting yourself against malicious actors and scammers, right? You have either you could be interacting with an entity that you don't know if you can trust, and that could be one version of a malicious actor or a scammer, or you need to protect your own identity against being hijacked by someone, and that's another way that you need to be protecting your digital identity. Now, for that first version that I was talking about, when you're interacting with someone that you don't know, that's just a trust game. And that's part of what makes the world so real. Because very much in the same way that, you have to trust the people that you're interacting with, that's also very much the same mindset that you need to be taking when you're interacting with other players on EveNet. But otherwise, in terms of whether or not you can stop yourself from being hijacked, you are thinking about, so that's one of the reasons that I talked earlier about building in account abstraction. It's one of the ways that we're thinking about ensuring that your identities are as centralized as possible, but also at the end of the day that you can hold the keys. It's maybe a little bit more technical than we want. I'm happy to talk about it after the Q&A if you want. But yes, so basically the short answer to this is we're going to be building in account abstraction in order to let those things be as seamless as possible for the user. And then we have a second question here. Can you talk more about the way that assets or identity are self-sovereign, user-owned, and portable? What other platforms beyond Frontier might I take them to? CCP Raudur.
Whoa, I need to read that one again. Yeah, so we really want you to own the assets, and we really want, we are building out this tool like account abstraction, and we were building out these different tools, but we want you, if you are advanced technology programmer, you can do it however you want to do it. And you should have full control of everything that is on chain. And how we do that is that the game fully respects that the chain is trusted. If the chain says hey, there are 10 items X here, the game is yeah, perfect, I trust you. And that could be moved to a different layer, another game, and you have full control of that. But the only thing that we really focus on is that we have something called digital physics, and we're really focused on location, and that items have to honor their location. So, for example, we have smart storage units in game, and they are, when you put items into a smart storage unit, they are basically minted on chain. That doesn't mean they can be moved anywhere and go to another game and then come back into another area in the game. They have to come back in through that gate. So basically, that's how we honor those digital physics, and that's really important to us.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit more to that question about how items are player-owned and portable. When you're creating an assembly or when you have an identity, there's no real way with EveNet for CCP to basically be oh, I don't like this, I'm just going to delete it from the memory of the network. The network is always going to be there, and that is going to be persistent for as long as EveNet survives. And we want EveNet to be a decentralized network so that it persists, even after, even beyond CCP. So yes, and if you want to be taking that beyond Frontier, there are also ways for you to basically take that identity and to be porting it into, let's say you want to create another digital contract somewhere and you want to be using that in a context that is outside of EveNet. There are ways for you to be able to do that. Yeah. Are there plans to add game events to the chain? Kill mails, contracts that resolve beyond the game.
Yeah, so we already have kill mails on chain. So how we do it right now, it's different, a bit different from the EVE Online kill mails. They are not as data rich, so it is who killed who was killing someone, who was the victim, what kind of ship was it, when was it, and where was it, and that's something that is kind of optional for you, either as a victim or as a killer, to kind of publish to the chain, and everyone has access to that data. And the idea there is that it's basically added to the chain, and then any item or a smart contract on chain can read from that table and make a decision. For example, we have like smart turrets and smart gates, and they have access control. And you could then say, hey, someone killed me. I'm not going to allow them to pass through my gate, or I'm going to start to shoot them with my smart turret. And we are also playing around, like you mentioned, the pods, the provable object data, and that is a way to have the read data that's similar to ESI that we call the World API, where there are okay, Tom, where there are events in the game and all sorts of data about the world that you can create zero knowledge proof on top of, that don't have to happen on chain or in the Web3 world. They can happen in an app that is in the Web2 world, but you can also publish that proof and use that to verify things on chain as well. And we really think that's going to be powerful for builders and players to have more access to the data that is happening in the world, because we have a lot of data, and we're working with the data team of kind of figuring, and game designer figuring, what is the right amount of data to kind of expose and give players access to. As we don't want to create a game of chess, we want you to be able to kind of hide your information. We want you to be able to sneak and hide your identity, so we can't reveal everything, but we want to reveal enough so you can build cool apps and dApps with us in the game.
And to add to that second question about contracts that resolve beyond the game, yes, this is absolutely something that we would love to see. You can absolutely trigger certain kinds of events. This is all something that you can program, so you can write this own logic yourself if you wanted to. You can trigger any sort of logic that you wanted. In, let's say, one example that I really love is, like, let's say you want to have a doorbell that goes off every time a smart turret gets fired or something, and you can write a contract that would basically react to that event happening. So when that event is recorded in the game, then you would basically, have this table that you could write an API into. You would read from that, and that could then take that information, take that data, and push it to something that's happening in the real world. So let's say you want to have a doorbell go off every time that your turret fires. You could do that. Exactly. So just so that you know how much action's going on in game. All right, great. We have another question from the audience. We have a microphone.
Hello. Okay. I have a question, because blockchain is immutable, right? By its very own definition. So it's great when good things happen. It's great because it's immutable and it stays on the chain. What happens if something bad happens? I mean, some bad player behavior, as we've seen if online, some assets were deleted because it's kind of punishment, but here you have it on a blockchain. It stays there forever. So how are you going to deal with things which may be considered in something which shouldn't have happened, but now it's on a blockchain? You cannot revoke it because it's there, right? Or you just allow everything and just see what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting question, and it is a difficult problem to solve on the blockchain. But how we look at it, we use a framework called MUD, where we kind of build a world, and the concept there is there's a autonomous world, and we build these layers of rules. So we really want to enforce these digital physics, where it's like you can do almost everything if you behave within the boundaries of those rules. And we believe that we can create good enough rules that over time we will have kind of access to that world, and we could make updates. If there is a problem and we see like, hey, someone found a bug here, we can fix that and we can adjust it. But then when we have kind of gone through some cycles of testing and we see like, whoa, this is kind of the layer we can go up top, and we can say like the digital physics are solid and they're secure enough that we can kind of go to the next layer, and we can add more rules, and we can trust that that is. And there we can add like a multi-sig, and we've talked about having some kind of DAO where we can vote with the community, so you kind of give the players the ability to kind of say, hey, like it's not CCP that is in full control, but the community controls it. And we would say, we agree as a community, this is our game, that this bug, someone found a way to kind of do something that we don't like, let's fix that together. And we would sign with our keys that, yes, we agree, this is something that we want to change together. And then the goal, and it's an ambitious goal, but like in 20, 30, 40 years, we want to say, hey, we don't have the key anymore. And maybe no one has the key to the bottom layer of this world. And it's kind of like we won't be able to change the gravity. It's here to stay. And that's kind of where we want to go with it. But then the government, the social structure is something that people have keys to, and they can vote and change that layer.
Amazing. We have another question here on the screen. Can you talk about the roadmap for reducing reliance on CCP servers over time? And when might we see gameplay continue after the proverbial nuking of Iceland, or, you know, like when we have that volcano that just blows all of us up?
Yeah, I can take this one. So basically, we are really focused on, so I think like, just like EVE Online, we don't want, like, EVE Online is not a database game. It's never, like, it's not introduced as, like, a database game. And EVE Frontier isn't really a blockchain game. It's using blockchain. And we're trying now to move things over to the chain where it makes sense, where it brings the builders and the players power, where we amplify their experience, and we're focusing on finding those use cases where we can move that to the chain. And I think like the goal is obvious, and that is we want to decentralize the ownership, we want to have like a shared revenue stream, and we really want to focus on kind of having this game all together and move it out of CCP's control over time, a long-term goal. And there we want to find, and I think like moving everything to chain right now would not be optimal. Like we just couldn't do it. It would be really slow, it would be really expensive, and it's just not the way to do it. But I think like over time we'll move more and more over to the chain, and that's gonna be where we can at least anchor the information. So we might hash some of the part of the data and we say, this moment, this is how the world looks. We move more and more of the systems over there, but we might use other ways like IPFS, different kind of structure of database where we host everything together. And then if there's a nuking in Iceland, then yeah, the game will still live on.
Amazing. Okay, great. We have another question. I love this audience. There's so many questions coming through.
Thank you. You said that essentially with a game you're creating, you can establish a connection between EVE Frontier and the real world with the example of the alarm bell. Aren't you worried about the fact that EVE players, which are notoriously creative, might end up find a way or a workaround that has maybe, let's say, negative consequences, and on how that would reflect on your part? Like even if we think about nothing serious, but like crashing the value of Ethereum in some way or form. Thank you.
That's a really good question. It's definitely one that we have had to wrestle a lot with because, of course, the nature of the chain is that the chain is a decentralized entity. And you're right, you know, like EVE players are notoriously crafty. EVE players are really good at finding all sorts of ways of breaking systems. And this is one of the balancing acts that we have had to juggle between trying to create a system that is really player-owned without creating a system that opens up the gates of access far too early. This is why things like digital physics is important to us, because it makes sure that we're able to slowly, bit by bit, create those rules of the universe and put them on chain where we can't touch them. Once they're there, we can't touch them. And they're just always true for every single player out there. And we need to try and make sure that the amount of access that we're giving to players, as we slowly increase that, will then also match the craftiness, I suppose you can call it that, of the players in a way that they're not going to blow up the entire universe with some, like you said, crashing the price of Ethereum if it comes down to that. So yeah, but also, I mean, yeah, I don't know how. I'm sure EVE players could find a way to kind of link Frontier and crashing the price of Ethereum. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but yeah, let's talk about it afterwards. Stupid question: can you blow up or hack the blockchain?
I think the not a stupid question, and I think the answer here is yes, you can, but it's really really hard. And I think like we have Bitcoin and Ethereum that are the two biggest chains, and they've been running for well, almost 15 years and 10 years, and I think like this is kind of the interesting thing. I think everyone would, every hacker would dream to be able to hack it and figure out a way to do it, but they're still going strong, and we are using Ethereum, and we see the value of that, even though like Ethereum is technically like an expensive chain to use if we would to move everything there. So we are using a layer 2 or a roll up. So we basically have a chain that we use that then kind of anchors on top of Ethereum. So Ethereum makes sure to kind of persist the state of how our world is evolving. And I would be surprised if it would get hacked, but I think like it would be weird to say no, but it's really really difficult.
Awesome. All right, great. We have another question.
Sorry, another one. Are you going to? Is it going to be a? Sorry, different question. The same question, but phrased correctly. Where are you going to store the blockchain? Are you allowing to, like, us players to hold elements of a blockchain, and each of us holds it, or is it all stored somewhere on your servers?
Good question. So the idea is that eventually anybody could run validators, and I think like for now we are just using a public chain, so anybody could participate in the validation set of the nodes, and we are expecting corporations and like the players that really have something at stake in the game, they will probably want to run their own validators, and they would probably want to have their own kind of set of nodes. And I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic that's also going to strengthen the network and help us with decentralizing. But it's a interesting thing when it comes to the tokenomics and everything, that like we really believe, at least how if we would compare to EVE Online, that the community is going to be really engaged in also the validation set of the node. So anybody, it's going to be public, anybody can host and validate every transaction that happens on the EVENet.
Great. We have another question about digital physics. Once a rule is on the chain, it cannot be changed. And what plan do we have if we wind up writing a rule down the line that doesn't pan out?
Yeah, this maybe like links to the previous question. So we are using the MUD framework, where we can update the world. So if there is a rule in that world, we can change that world for now. And that's kind of where we want to do like a shared signature. We want to have a shared control over the world. And we really want to harden and get that world to a place where we can graduate it with like, hey, now the digital physics are there, and then we can start to focus on and work with the builders on the government and the social layer. But that's kind of how we plan to do it, is that we still have the keys, then we would share the key, and then we would throw the key away. And that's kind of the roadmap to fully decentralization.
All right. And the next question, what is the likelihood that 51% attacks, misuse of blob space, validator node exploits, or MEV exploits become emergent gameplay? Is that part of our plan? This would be a great thing for the infrastructure that we're running on.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we see, like, we see the power of, like, not having our own private chain and then gradually giving people access to that chain. We want to be a part of a larger network, and, like, there's always possibilities, and we plan to kind of, we're aware that these are things that can happen, but, like, this is the power of blockchain. They are decentralized. Like, you need a huge amount of computation or assets to be able to do the 51% attack, and it's like, it shouldn't be viable to do that. And this is also where kind of the value of the game, like we see, like Stefan mentioned earlier, like we are building out this economy, and in the beginning it won't be worth that much, and then it builds up, and over years it becomes more and more valuable. And that's also where we believe that the player and the player count is going to increase, and we see just more and more people sharing the responsibility, and getting that 51% is just really, really hard.
Yeah, I think it's something very similar to the way that we're basically relying on the community to support each other. Of course, you know, like if 51% attacks become a part of emergent gameplay, then the path forward that I think we would try to rely on is making sure that the community is strong enough that that 51% attack doesn't really happen. Whether that's because it's economically infeasible for that to happen, or it's because, you know, that there's enough nodes and validators that are being run that would not, you know, like let an attack like that become a feasible viability. Now, is it something that is theoretically possible? It's always theoretically possible, but we are relying on the real world of this to basically prevent something like that from being a viable possibility. And do we expect that speculative players will buy and hold or flip valuable assets, leading to artificially inflated prices or market distortion? And how do we solve for this? Was anyone at the economics talk that was just before?
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to happen, and like we are not here to prevent it. We're here to just build the infrastructure so people can participate in this ecosystem, and this, if this is the plan for players and corporations, so be it. I think Stefan would welcome it to have just this means that there are participants, there are people that are interested, and we will try to build the best tools so you can identify if something is happening, you can be prepared, but there's like, we are not planning on saying like, you can't do this. If you're following the digital physics, or if you're within the boundaries of the world, go nuts.
Casinos were banned in EVE for RMT. Will they be allowed in Frontier?
This is Jochen here, our lawyer. No, okay. So this is a difficult one. So no, like we do not plan to ban anything, but we have a EULA where we are kind of like, if you're breaking the rules of the country of whatever within the game, we can close down things in the game, like not allow you to show that within the game client, and we would always be protecting our players from malicious activity within the game client where we can. But on chain, on EveNet, we can't. Like that is a shared network, and we really can't do anything to change that. But I think it's a different to be allowed and maybe not banned. But it's a fine line.
Amazing. How are we doing on time?
15 minutes.
Yeah? Great. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Oh, great. We have one more over there.
Okay. Speaking of casinos, what are the plans to keep people from breaking laws, like running a casino in the game is probably going to break a law. Doing, arranging for nuclear weapons exchanges is probably breaking laws. Or that's okay. That's wild, but like for other things like GDPR and things like that, what are the plans for making sure that everything's kosher and governments don't get upset?
So that's a good question. So we are like trying our best to be like applicable and have licenses. So we are like within every legality of operating the game. We will have EULA, and we will make sure that like if you are in a certain country where this behavior is not allowed, we can close that down. So in game. But then it becomes the question of like when we are on a public network that is decentralized and anyone can do whatever, it is technically not our infrastructure. We create the content and we are just allowing anyone else to create that content. And we can't close that down, but we'll try our best to kind of work with anyone that has a complaint about it. But we truly can't, in a decentralized network, control it any more than anyone else would.
Yeah, I think another way of thinking about that also is just that, we're providing the infrastructure for all of these, for all of this activity to be something that you can access as long as you're within Frontier. But once you're outside of Frontier, then, really just like anywhere else in the world, you're kind of on your own. Like you wouldn't be, taking yourself to like a place with potentially dangerous activity, and then just, going about your normal business and then hoping that another government would be able to regulate that. That's just outside our jurisdiction. So that is very much a active question that we're constantly asking ourselves, in terms of building a game, building out Frontier on what is essentially a very decentralized network, one that is open and public access to everyone. So it's very much an ongoing question that we're asking. Awesome. Any more questions? Does it look like we're good?
Perfect. Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this.
Thank you, CCP Raudur and CCP Sondheim. We're going to be back at 1 o'clock, where CCP Tuxford will be running through the Carbon engine and how we're going to open source it. So do join us for that. Thank you.